talking with people like yourself who have been here and invested in the community and the aviation history of Dayton much more than myself. Um, I was fascinated to hear that originally, and you talk about the mail system. Um, Dayton was part of the early star system. I understand that was an acronym for something, but anyway, there was a light navigation system
Correct.
for the early mail pilots to fly. And Dayton happened to be, because of the geography here,
The
geographic
90-minute
position.
market was then too.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was on, there were about 4 different light routings that intersected here at Dayton. And I think even before Dayton had a significant airport here.
No, I think that's correct. I think that's correct. And then what fascinated me, and I have to look this up, that Dayton had a dedicated airmail facility over by the terminal that was closed a few years ago. But I think it was continuous operation as an airmail facility from about 1928 till they closed it because of budget cutting, which I think was a huge mistake. I mean, that's just,
There's a lot of change going on in the world.
there sure is.
And
But that correlation between having a corporate hub here, which CFA is, and why this airport came to be here in the first place, because the government put all the money into the airmail. The passengers were extra. I don't know if you knew that. The passengers didn't really matter. It was hauling the mail. That's why it was still expensive to be a passenger, but the whole airline system developed really to carry the mail.
that was the rationale
That was
for
it.
the system,
That was-
and that was the rationale for funding,
And that
federal
was
funding and
before
investment.
Roosevelt. That was actually the Hoover administration, and then after the Depression, the Roosevelt administration carried that water and expanded that, and then DC-3 was Howard Hughes, Donald Douglas, all that came from carrying the mail.
It's occurred to me, and a very wise person once told me in our business that if you could theoretically somehow develop a modern airport with capable runways and nav aids, if you put it out in the middle of a desert where there wasn't any commerce at all, within 5 years a city would grow up around that airport.
I think that's true.
And we've seen that in many areas
Look at Denver.
around. Absolutely, when they built the new Denver International Airport,
Yeah.
and I spent a lot of time in Colorado, and we all wondered why they were moving the airport out to rabbit country. They call that rabbit country
that.
out there, and the wind blows out there and everything. They built arguably the most sophisticated passenger system, and there was a lot of skepticism about
Sure.
putting that airport out there, but a whole city now has developed around Denver International Airport.
I think the same thing could be said for the Dayton Airport. That there are communities around here. But the interesting thing I found in this research is jets and big airplanes need longer runways. But most airports used to just be a circle of grass, and there was no crosswind landing. You just landed directly into the wind because the landing ground was a circle. It may have been a mile. I think it would be an interesting thing to go back to.
It was interesting and that's true. When we first started flying into the CIS, we flew to many of the cities that were trying to develop commercially in the Soviet Union, were either or phasing down part of the military industrial complex there.
Mm-hmm.
And some of those aerodromes were very interesting because what they might have a 2-mile square area that consisted of blocks of concrete. And what they did was, depending on when or season or where they needed to park whatever kinds of airplanes, they would use, they would move the runways around on those things.
That's
and that was a strategic capability.
Sure.
And they could launch airplanes off of those facilities. But they could, at any given time, they could take off towards any direction.
I mean, the art of a crosswind landing has become for runways after it wasn't just a circle. I always found that fascinating. Then in the middle of the circle was the windsock, and you just
Yeah, you land into the wind.
yeah, great. That's a perfect answer. I appreciate it.